Oh, you are? I don't take a joke.
All right, well, you have to let me talk. The thing is, teachers
That curtain was supposed to cut down the glare, but it just doesn't do much of a job.
it's a television show.
Yeah, too many blankets, too many shawls, too many pockets.
Susan, if you want to sit there, you can. I guess, no. Well, yeah, maybe.
Calm down. What's going on out there? It looks like joy and love and happiness. So, what we know about our dear Lama is that something has come up in the 3-year retreat that he needs to be thinking about this morning, and he may show up, or I'm looking at Sally. Probably not, but he will be teaching tonight, so you can come back and ask your questions of him tonight. In the meantime, us is up here, and you will do our best to explore the Dharma, how it can work in our lives to reduce suffering. So, this is your time. Salidra, and then, oh, wait, Miriam's got the mic. She got herself all set up. Then Salidra. Good job.
Sorry about that little short stop there. Hi. So I've been thinking about this all week. In fact, a couple of weeks now. The whole shtick about men sexually molesting women and how it's become out in the public now, much more than it ever was, it seems. And I have a couple of opinions on it.
As most people do.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I guess my opinion, I feel like I want to state my opinion. Is that okay?
No.
Okay. Well, I've got the mic
No,
now,
you
so I
cannot.
guess I will.
Could I stop you? No. Would I want to?
Well, I guess my first thought is I have a hard time believing in punishing people, male or female, who didn't know at the time that they were doing something that it was not a good thing to do, or wrong, or downright harmful. I do believe that karma will do what karma does. I also believe that education and recognizing power differentials is perhaps the most important thing, and how that gets expressed and that sort of thing. That's all very secular and very samsara, and I was wondering if and what Buddhism says about this stuff. Thank you.
The Buddha would say it is suffering. It's all suffering. Everyone's suffering. The person labeled victim is suffering. The person labeled abuser is suffering. It's all suffering. So Buddhism is about ending suffering. First place to look is the mind. That would be your own mind and heart. So if we, of course, we have lots of feelings about this. And for most, probably both men and women, and other gender people too, we all have some kind of experiences, some kind. So those rise up, and it's time to work with them. So just like, so many of these situations, we need to get clear, or it's helpful to get clear. What are your values? What are your values that you want to bring to the situation? And then, but get very clear about that. For example, we could bring the 4 immeasurables. Loving kindness. And remember, immeasurable means it applies to everyone. There's the easy ones and the difficult ones. But the minute we leave someone out, label them hopeless, bad, them, other, we've fallen away from the bodhisattva path. One of the main vows of a bodhisattva is to never exclude anyone from their loving kindness, from their wish for that one to be liberated. That's tough. So mostly we all violate that vow all the time. I've had that vow for a long time. I'm sure I violate it every day. I might even violate it every hour. Because the minute I'm like, that SOB or that, I'm outside of it. But the point is to see that, because the compassion also has to apply to me. And I see, Zopa, you're suffering. In the anger, in the fear, the first casualty is your own mind. So, just on a practical level, if I'm full of anger and fear, and bad memories, by the way, it has stirred up a lot. Is that going to be a skillful mind and attitude to bring to the situation? No. But is it natural to feel those things? Yes. So calm abiding is quite helpful. You sit, you see, I'm furious. I'm filled with memories of being a woman in law school when it was 1971 and there were 2% women, 2 out of every 100. And the humiliation, the sexual harassment, by the way, there were no sexual harassment policies even. There are those now and they get violated, but we didn't even have them to stick on the wall. There was no legal sexual harassment cases that have been brought. So you're just on your own with your little cluster of sisters who clump together to get through, and some very kind male allies, professors, other students who were happy that we were there rather than dismayed. So, and there were a couple African American people going through the very same kind of experience, not welcome, seen as other, seen as weird, So all of this comes up. That's my little story, but we all have many things. But you sit with it. And then I do what I've learned on this path. I send to those who were suffering from the pattern of, let's say, discriminating against me or anyone. I send them wisdom. I wish them peace. I wish them joy. I wish them freedom from that suffering, freedom from their ignorance. That's my own self-interest. It's practical. The Dalai Lama keeps saying this. This is about being practical. If all these people who've engaged in that kind of behavior were totally free of suffering, they wouldn't do it. So why wouldn't I wish them freedom from suffering? Do I want to wish them more suffering? Yeah, I kind of do. But that's the first step, is see that. See that. Yeah, I want to put them in jail, and I want to do this. I want to be the lawyer. I go to my lawyer really fast and I file all kinds of lawsuits, and I used to do that kind of lot. And it was kind of, I shouldn't rejoice in it. But occasionally I think it was helpful. But it was done with some spite, and which is what I suffered from. So anything in your own mind, that's the first workshop. Clean it up. Then decide what you want to do. What's my capacity? Maybe my capacity is just to tell my story to someone so they see how widespread it is. Or maybe my capacity is to listen to someone. Or maybe I could even go so far as to listen to some poor person who got caught in that and find out, how did that happen for you, with an open heart? How did that happen? And I represented quite a number of child abusers in the juvenile court, and a young man running prostitutes when he was 16. Oh my God. He had a little group of women that he was making money off of. And just because he was my client and I could spend time with him, you actually trace back with them. Oh my God. Almost all of them have been sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused, to the extreme as children. I mean, stories you don't want to know. And they're wounded. So I don't wish them any more wounding. So that's how I do it. But I only do that because my teachers taught me to do that. I didn't know to do that. That's what the Dharma's for. That's what the Sangha's for. That's what the teachers teach us. We don't have to do it the old way. Because when we do it, we just spin the wheel of suffering again. Spin it again. Spin it again. Revenge, hatred, dismay. I don't understand how anyone could do that. I understand how they could. That's really important, to be able to understand how can someone do that. We have to look deep enough to understand how that could happen. And if we went through those very same experiences, how we would likely have done that. They're human. We're fully human. I've done things I would never want any of you to know. And I bet everyone in here has something like that you would not want anyone to know. That's human. We're humans. That's why we have to have a path and a practice and teachers. That might be enough. Thank you for that question, though. Do you have something to add, Bill? Or Dora?
Do you want more? Well, I will acknowledge that there is plenty more that could be said.
Yeah.
Whether or not I feel like I have to say anything now, that's a different matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's important that we don't stop discussing it. It's really important. There's an opportunity here, an opening. But we need to go in it with our values very clear. And I had a really difficult talk with a friend day before yesterday about this. And when it got too hot, I just backed down. So be ready to do that. And in a good way, just say, you know, I'm having so many feelings right now, I need to take a break. And almost everyone will let that happen. And then you go away and work it out some more, and now I'm going to send an email follow-up, you know. So be ready to watch your own stuff, because if you're there ready to scream and yell, that ain't going to be helpful. Yeah.
There is one thing, when you use the word punishment, that then makes me think about just what the general paradigms are that we use for sorting these things out. And you asked, like, well, kind of this, you know, there are these paradigms, and then kind of what's a Buddhist paradigm. And one of the general things that I noticed that our ideas about punishment and whatnot fit also into our ideas about justice. And that's kind of a whole topic there. One thing that I would point out, and which is what basically you've been talking about, is there's a different perspective if you place compassion, and not just sort of sentimentally feeling good about everybody, but compassion from the point of view of what actually alleviates suffering in myself and others. What could I do to set something in motion? That's a different question than placing the paradigm of justice at the center. And it's worth I just want to acknowledge that they're two different paradigms, and it's worth pondering them and pondering what's different. And if we really place, how do I relate to this so that suffering actually diminishes in the future? That's a critical one, and it's not again, compassion. Often when the word compassion comes up, we get this kind of feeling.
Sympathetic.
Yeah, just sort of kind of goopy, sympathetic notions, and when it gets down to something that's much, much more challenging than that.
But there might not be such a bifurcation with justice and compassion. I just finished reading a book about Gandhi, and he would say justice, the first principle of justice is ahimsa, no harm. So he was Hindu, but Buddhism is based on that. So the first kind of justice is no harm. Now that's how he would define it.
Yeah.
But I think Bill's talking about the way we think of justice in a relative level in this country.
Yeah. And I think that's when you bring up, well, Gandhi was able to articulate something in a way that we wouldn't necessarily sort of automatically, kind of, we just did free association on the word justice and all the things that we would think about. No harm is probably not going to make the short list.
It hasn't so far in this country. Well, we're making that happen. So, yeah, we're making that happen. By the way, when things get really crummy out there, which seems like there's an out there and a crummy, which is kind of funny in a way, because it's, But anyhow, that's for another talk. But I start reading all kinds of things on models, like what did Gandhi go through? I mean, 300 of his people mowed down, just sitting there, doing nothing, just sitting where the British didn't want them, shot and killed, until the British made themselves sick from it. That was one of his methods I didn't really know about. But it was like they sat with such spiritual oomph, willing to risk their lives to change that, to bring ahimsa to India. And the British just mowed them down time after time, but to the point where they themselves got sick of it. And I think what he was doing was mirroring to them, look what you have become. Unbelievable strength. That's like spiritual strength. That's like, whoa. So, but the whole time, all of his people trained in ahimsa. You don't harm back. That's like unbelievable. But so's the Bodhisattva path. Bodhisattvas want those kind of situations. They long for them. Bodhisattvas say, I'll go to hell to bring out even one being. I'll stay down there. That's like, I mean, these models are like way out there. So I go to those models to be inspired, and I go to them to see, you know, I don't want to judge myself too much, but I'm kind of puny still about this stuff. You know, I'm so upset at this and so upset at that, but have compassion for myself. But see, wow, the goal is I want to be like that. I want to be like that and do it with joy and no problem. They're not like, I'll go to hell and it'll be awful. They're like, wow, I got to go down there and get my mom out. I'm up for it. I mean, wow. So I read things like that to get a perspective and get inspired of what the possibilities are. I hope that's helpful. I don't know. Is it really? Oh.
Yes.
Well, he wants in.
Oh, I think Jean.
He wants
It's
in.
a flicker. It's very beautiful, actually.
Flicker.
Trying to make a house back in the corner.
Salitra.
So great. It's such a wonderful thing to be talking about in such a container of consciousness. I really appreciate that. So this morning we did the recitation, same I've been doing for years, and the words, I will now practice the absorption of calm abiding. And that word just kept resonating with me. Absorption. Like I've said this so many times, and all of a sudden, what does that mean, absorption? What is it like for me to sit and surrender and open and receive and give the depth of absorption of calm abiding, in order, simply by doing this, to help relieve the suffering of all beings. I was just so struck by that, and my mind was saying, okay, what is it to completely absorb calm abiding? And wow, by doing this, I can help at this moment relieve suffering. So all these things, I read, I practice, I read books.
Yeah.
But it was this, whoa. Those few words and that opening prayer is so magnificent.
Yeah.
And so we just love to hear something from you all about that.
For absorption, I turn to Bill.
It's interesting. I was also kind of, that word came up for me this morning again. Oh, ding, kind of, so you spin the wheel and one thing jumps out. And so that also stood out to me. Of course, I always try to reverse engineer back and wonder what the Tibetan was that was being translated. And I know there was an original something originally, but we've not been able to find it. And Lama Sonam from Eugene, he said, no, I don't know exactly what Lama Songtseng was using as a basis for that. But there are a number of technical terms that absorption could refer to. I hesitate to go into it from this point of view because the resonance that you had with it, I don't want to go messing with that. And it's like, maybe I better say nothing and say, keep going, keep going. All right, you can take it. You can run with it, I'm sure. The absorption of calm abiding. This comes down to one of the ways to approach it is a sense of profound simplicity. The impulse that we have continually to do something, to chase, to go. To be able to stop feeding that and then just settle into that space of what arises when we let go of the feeding. Not stopping the feeding. Stopping is another interference, but being able to allow the mind to relax in that space of vivid, fresh awareness. So sometimes the word absorption, or some of the terms, whether it's samtin or samadhi in Sanskrit, sometimes these make it sound like we're going to go somewhere. We're going to go into some kind of, often some kind of secret meditation zone and hang out there separate from, I'm pulling down the curtains now. But when it gets down to it, it's a capacity for being freshly in the moment, freshly seeing what's unfolding without that kind of interference, without without the impulse to turn something into something else, which is kind of continually running in the back of our heads until we actually really relax deeply, till we really see what it is that we're doing. There's that kind of lurching for something else. And so that absorption it's a very key piece. Without that, it's at least some familiarity with it, if not, certainly not necessary to have a complete stabilization of it, but familiarity with that, it's very difficult to actually witness what arises in the mind. It's very difficult not to be captured by what arises in the mind. It's very difficult to be able to look deeper into the nature of the mind itself and all that arises in it. So it's a very important piece, but in that there's a kind of a profound simplicity is a core element in it. And this, since the context here was set in a certain way by Miriam's question, then looking to see how it is that our mind is when we're kind of relaxed and feeling like there's not something we need, something to improve on, something we're going to grasp. And the stories of the last week literally grasp at. But these are things with the ability for the mind to settle. It's easy to see those impulses arising. It's also easy to find that it's actually not necessary to chase after things in order for a profound well-being to be there in the mind. And that, I think, is one of the keys in our own practice, is to be able to find that, just acknowledge that there is this kind of font or depth of well-being that is intrinsically possible to tap into at any moment, in any moment. It's not, but we can't use that to beat ourselves up. Like, well, I should be facing everything with complete equanimity. I should be like this. I should be like that. That one, as you acknowledged, it's very, the stories come up and our associations come up, and we don't necessarily find our way back. But the more that we can actually become familiar with that place of the mind settled, the more we'll have in the back of our mind some place that say, actually, I don't need to jump into the fight. I don't need to abandon my wish to do no harm. I can actually start from a place of my own centeredness, my own well-being. So.
I think because of some of the words associated with absorption in the teachings, for me, to generalize from that, it helps me associate a sense of mastery of calm abiding, and so reflecting on that maybe is a helpful reminder to me of, okay, this is a very profound practice, and it does say practice the absorption. So I think it's a good reminder for me to recognize how profound it is, and that like, don't waste time, don't waste this session, work without effort to, remember that this is something, there's quite something profound here that rather than that what I've experienced typically, that's not all there is to it. I guess that's the thing. And so I find it inspirational. But it's interesting that you raise that, because I'm not sure we've ever even dwelt on that word before in a question. So it's good to think of each one of those words.
So great about these prayers, they can seem so simple, and we can get our usual kind of mind of, oh, I said this 3,000 times, just kind of float through. But Lama Michael is always encouraging us to do just what you did. You didn't do a doing, actually, but creating the space for the paying attention gently to what we're saying, and something can rise like that. The absorption thing, to me, is the image I get is what the Dalai Lama said about his own mind when some reporter asked him, "Don't you ever get angry?" And he said, yeah, I do. And that's like waves on the top of the ocean. But they are the ocean, and there's no other place they can go back into the ocean. So everything is absorbed in this peaceful Buddha nature, not fake, but, really our true nature. So all these things go by, like this current sexual abuse thing, but it was the Korean War a month ago. War with Korea, and then it was the election. And if you keep going back, if you watch the Vietnam War stuff, it was that. And I'm 70 now, so I have a lot of these to draw on and go, wow, that was big waves, and where'd they go? All that becomes important is, how did I meet it? How did I meet it? With what did I meet it? These things are just going to always be, waves will stir up. Other days, waves don't stir up so much. But how do I meet it? Do I add to it? Do I create a tornado hurricane in there and drown a bunch of people? Or do I see it, that big ocean mind? That's what I think we're developing. I mean, no, wrong word. We're not developing it. We are getting in touch with it. So important that we start realizing our true nature. And I think out of calm abiding, and only since I've been doing calm abiding, do I get a sense of what the mind and the awareness actually are. I have to calm down. And I always put a pitch in for this, that we have unrealistic expectations, at least I do, and all those do is discourage us. I sat for 20 minutes and my mind was just so screwed up. I'm never going to sit again. But the idea that we can lead these incredibly busy lives, piling thing on thing on thing, holidays and trips and work and more things and more things and more things, and then that we can sit down for 30 minutes and be quiet. Wow. I don't know. I can't do that. I have to simplify. So it is important for us to look at our lives and say, how much am I doing that I don't really need to do? Because that might be a kindness to others to slow down. They might enjoy it. I find that when I say with my family, oh, let's not do that big thing. Why don't we stay in the house and play with the kids? And then all kinds of things occur. We don't have to always go here, there, there, there. You know what I'm saying? Pack them in the car and drive them like crazy, and this entertainment and that entertainment, and everybody's, So just what we can do with our lives to support our practice, the practice on the cushion and the practice off the cushion. What could I do to slow down a little so that it all goes smoother, so that I'm, as one of the prayers says, so that I'm a source of nourishment. I don't come out all depleted and needing. I come out as a source of nourishment. More of a listener than I'm desperate to tell you what happened, So, okay, hope that's helpful. We probably have room for one more question or comment. Jane.
Miriam's question led me to remember a practice that I've just been recently taught, which is a kind of bodhisattva meditation where you sit, and if you want to, you can imagine the big boat of the Mahayana. And it is your job to put all sentient beings on that boat. And you have to think of them and let them on board. And you can't, you have, so it teaches you where your weak spots are. And then it was suggested to me that we include not just people, but animals, insects, rats, spiders, whatever we're afraid of or we think is ugly in the world of non-human beings, and try and put them on board too. I don't know, Miriam's question made me think about doing that practice.
That's great. That's yeah, perfect. Yeah.
I've on occasion, when some of these very thorny questions of the human realm come up, I've occasionally found it interesting to expand my frame of reference to think about all beings, and that it changes. It makes it. Well, I'll say it allows me to a little bit step outside of the hockey fight that I'm all too willing to participate in, and really ponder Just what is it that I could contribute that actually would help unravel confusion and suffering? What might it be?
Yeah, when I was a young legal aid lawyer doing these cases around sex and child abuse, I didn't have the tools that I have now. But as soon as I had them, I started kind of every time there's a crisis thing, like that shooting at the country music festival. We've probably forgotten that one because there's been a couple others. This is how it's going now. But I'm been training my mind, and I just offer this as something for you to, if it works for you, to immediately first pray for the one who did the hideous act. Everyone immediately goes to the victims, like, let's pray for the families, and which is very good. But I'm sort of training my mind to pray for the one who shot people, or the one who did the bombing, or even imagine that's my son or my brother, because then it gets me a heart connection towards, and because it is someone's son, it is someone's brother, someone's husband, how sad they're feeling and how horrified. So it's just a kind of trying to strengthen the mind toward those situations and not just fall into the habit we usually have of that one's bad, the victims are good, so I pray for the victims and put them away, you know. So the bodhisattva path, you have to get them onto the boat somehow. So that's the way I do it. I start thinking, they could have been my family in the past. Yeah. Okay, thank you all so much. And come back tonight to see Lama Michael. And next Sunday will be All Day Sunday with, is it Chenrezig, am I right? Yeah, next Sunday all day with Chenrezig, with Lama Michael. And now it is cleaning time for our hall, which is one of our practices. So if you can stay for 15 minutes and just take a task on that little task board in the back. As soon as you decide to do the task, turn the card over, and someone will help you. Willow, are you going to help with them finding cleaning supplies? So can you raise your hand? And at least if you can't stay, do pick up your cushion and your zapu and zabuton and shake them outside and bring them back. That helps get the dust down. Okay, thank you. Oh yeah, we better dedicate. Give all the merit to someone else.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.